So this is a treat. So I run a program in the mornings called Sanctuary, and the way we roll is we do it anonymously. We do audio only. So I'm so excited to get to see some faces that I haven't seen. Hi, Steve. Yay. Awesome. Okay. And all of you other lovely folks, thank you so much for being here. I want to just start with saying if you feel comfortable to reveal your beautiful face, I would really like to invite you to bring yourself on visually if you're comfortable with that, if energetically you're feeling that. I feel like in terms of energetic exchange, it feels more balanced. So if you're open and available, and I understand there are times when you're not, but if you are feeling open and available, we would love to see your faces. Melissa, any words you want to say as we open?
Sure, great to see everyone. Good evening. The little squares and the faces, and just to feel the energy. Jen and I both work with energy in different ways, and I think what's so important is that everything that we do, all of us, is an energy exchange, because at the base we are energy. And so our interconnection with one another on this call and this circle tonight, our interconnection in our daily lives with the planet itself, and then with the planets and the heavenly bodies that Jen will be referring to, it's all energetic, and we're all part of this great universal flow and the ability to connect with the chi force, the life force, and to bring it together and know that we are affected at the same time that we affect. And I think the balance, as Jen said, the balance of energy exchange, seeing the faces, the balance of how your energy moves through the world, and the balance of how you receive the energy that's moving around you is really what's key. And I think when you listen to John's information about the planetary movement and the energy that's going on planet-wise right now, how it's affecting our planet and how it can affect you, can also bring you to realize that you don't have to be a cork bobbing in this great sea. You can have a little bit of direction, and you can have a little bit of an ability to meet those forms that come your way from the place that you choose. And that's where your power comes in, and your ability to harness the chi force and the power and the work with it. So I think what is really important in our beginning tonight is to recognize, first of all, that we'll bring our energy back into our own container so that we can be open to listen and receive, and we can learn about what's going on out there, but we can also learn about how we can navigate that energy. Does that make sense, Jen?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
You wanted me to open with a little bit of energy?
If you would, that'd be beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. So what I like to do is, as Jen does a morning thing, I also do a morning thing daily. And we always start with breath, because at the base of everything, the breath or the chi force is what animates this physical form that we're in, that you're in, that I'm in. And so how we use our breath consciously can help us really be conscious of all those other energies in the universe and find our perfect place within it. So I like to start by breathing. We use a Samavriti breath, which is a breath exercise, simply meaning your inhale and your exhale are exactly the same. So you can start by maybe closing your eyes, straightening your spine, being aware of your energy centers, the chakras that move up the spine, and starting to draw the breath in very consciously into your body. You pause at the top of your inhale and you release, and you pause at the bottom of your exhale and you release, and you breathe in again. And so you use your mind to shape your breath by watching the length of the inhale and the exhale, and you can count like 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, 4, 3, 2, 1, pause, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now your length may be different than my count. So just use your mind to shape your breath by doing a couple of rounds of that count. And as you do that, on the inhale, imagine just pulling back all the scattered parts of you that are, off in the day, being mom or at work or interacting with people. Just breathing in and drawing all the parts of you that are out there thinking of something else back into your core, pausing and breathing out anything you don't need to be here, anything you don't need to be perfectly calm and at ease, anything you don't need to be perfectly yourself. So breathing in, I like to take that nice inward breath, sweep your arms out and up, and then float them down on the exhale to help us open our hearts. Divine Mother, Divine Father, Ascended Masters, Archangels, Guides, Guardians, we come on behalf of this circle and every individual in it this evening. May divine order and perfect harmony come to all individuals, and may all the energy that we generate by coming together with the purpose and the intention of being clear and open-hearted and fully present to these energies, may any energy generated just go back into the earth for all beings to be at peace and at harmony. And just taking a few moments, set your intention for being here on this new moon. And I'll be silent for a moment. We'll just draw on the breath and we'll once all together to open the practice this evening.
Om.
So I invite you, Jen, to just let us know a little bit about the potent energy of this new moon and what sign it's in, and maybe a little bit about the eclipse factor as well.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I'm delighted to meet with you and talk about the distinct shift in energies that are really palpable right now. And it's really a blessing to get to look at these shifts from our two modalities. So there's an astrological one and one based in channeling. So I'm going to begin, but I'm also going to invite Melissa to jump in as she sees fit and to bring her insights in as they flow. I'm also moderating, and so I'm admitting people, so I need to pause and shift screens from once in a while. So thanks for bearing with me. So the first thing I want to talk about, if you have just one takeaway this evening, it's the shift in energy that we're moving out of in 2020 and starting to move into now and into 2021. And so we're going from a constricted, heavy, pressurizing energy to a lighter, more enthusiastic energy where more opportunities are going to be opening up. So we'll be talking about this shift in energy as we look at two main astrological events of interest. So as Melissa said, today we have a new moon and a solar eclipse, and that peaked earlier today at 11:15 a.m. Eastern. So what are eclipses? Eclipses are a karmic acceleration. They occur every 6 months. And it's a time when something is revealed to you. So notice what you're observing right now. Notice what's coming up for you and pay extra attention to what is unfolding. So you might say that there's a redistribution of fate with eclipses. It's very much like the sorting hat from Harry Potter. The hat's put on a student's head and a message comes through, and poof, all of a sudden, the next part of the path is redirected and that student is off to Hufflepuff. It's very much like that. So eclipses are in and of themselves ungrounding because it's a concentrated, intense shift, change. And we humans tend to be change averse. So what might you see? What might you experience? You might see that souls are exiting, arriving, milestones, death, birth, marriage, divorce, habits that don't work anymore. So this is a pivotal time in our plot line. And it doesn't always occur exactly on the day that it is on the calendar. So look for the cues. Could be a few days before, a few days after, and it could take 6 months to unfold. So since eclipses tend to unground us, I loved Melissa's breath. We're going to do one more. We're going to do what I call the triangle breath that we do together in Sanctuary. So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale up our arms, and we're going to make a triangle with our fingers, and we're going to slowly lower this down the midline to bring in stabilization and grounding. We're going to do this 2 more times. Inhale, arms come up. Exhale, feel your entire being sink down a little bit deeper into your seat as the triangle lowers. So this is inspired from Qigong. One more, inhale. And exhale. So I'm going to pause there.
So as we ground, as above, so below, we've been working with a Sri Yantra in our healing classes with an acupuncturist, and that is a set of triangles pointing up and then pointing down, and there's 9 altogether. And so in your physical body, you have this Sri Yantra in every cell, these triangles that Jen is introducing you to, that grounds you to the earth and also gives you the ability to open to that big giant universe that we're talking about when we talk about the heavenly body she's going to be referring to. And I think that when she talked about the idea of we're moving out of this sort of contracted energy and we're moving into this expansive energy from Capricorn, an earth sign, to Aquarius, an air sign, I think that she's talking about from an energy you have the body, you know that you go through a contraction. And so that tight contraction that has to happen before you actually have the release or the birth of the new body is very intense. And this time, a lot of astrologers and energy workers, and in the channeling, it's referred to a lot of times as the birth canal that we've been in since these last periods of eclipses and so on and so forth. And so I just see the universe going through the contraction before energy can release and build within you. It sort of squeezes out everything that's in there, like you said, death, changes, old habits falling away, so that you can have the space for this new energy to lodge and to ground in the body, just like this triangular breath brought to us. And I tend to think of the energy as a spiral. You know, we're always moving up. And as Jen pointed out, humans don't always like to change. So sometimes we move around in our spiral very tight, like a little, you know, spring that's very tight. We just go around and we're like, oh yeah, I've been there before. But other times the string gets stretched, the spring gets stretched, and all of a sudden you're here and you're up here. And that's what happens with these cosmic shifts like we're having right now. We have an ability to jump from here to here if we're open, if we can be fluid, if we can let go of the contraction and stay in it as a rhythm, so that your contraction and expansion is like the waves rolling in, the waves rolling out, the body getting ready to birth. If you try to freeze frame it and you don't want to change, like Jen mentioned, it can be very difficult on you right now in these changing times. So I think that this particular new moon today, as Jen said, is also an eclipse, and she's going to let us know why that's different than a regular or full moon, and also what sign it's in, and how the characteristic of the sign and the sign's ruling planet can really make the whole experience very different, right?
Yeah, exactly. So eclipses are much more concentrated, potent, intense energy. So any new moon, any full moon, this takes the
Whoops, your throat.
energy and multiplies it by at least 10 times. So if you're already sensitive to new moons, you're already sensitive to full moons, you may be feeling even more of these energies right now. And then we look to the sign that it falls in. So for this particular new moon solar eclipse today, it's in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is about speaking your truth, sharing wisdom. taking risks, gambling, being confident, looking at the big picture, having faith, and my favorite, all that is holy and wild.
And with that kind of energy, I like the way you said it's about expanding, taking a risk. It's also about gambling. And so one of the basics of the teachings that I do and the part of the teaching work that I do is understanding that breath is really important. We have to breathe in, we have to breathe out. It's all about breath. And the second major thing I think we need to understand is duality. And so the characteristics that are positive are really accelerated at this time, but also the characteristics that can be negative can be accelerated as well. So I guess maybe what I would ask you is, would you want to point out what some of the shadows of this extreme Sagittarian energy might be if it's not balanced?
Definitely. So excess. Watch where you overdo. Watch where you overextend, overpromise, overshare, and where you get zealous. Do you inspire or do you coerce? And finally, pacing. With so much fire, you can burn out. So one thing that you can do that would be really helpful if you know your chart and how charts work is look to where 23 degrees Sagittarius falls to get a better idea of where in your life this eclipse will play out. So for example, let's say this eclipse falls in your third house, then you'll see shifts in communication and something arising with siblings.
And when Jen refers to 30 degrees, you know, when you look at the chart, it's like a pie for those of you who are not as steeped in astrology as others. Each sign is in 30 degrees. So it would be, you know, looking towards the end of the pie that's Sagittarius, you might figure it out. So mine is in the 9th house. And obviously I do a lot of spiritual work. It's definitely opening and changing and shifting. So you can feel that. I think that idea of being overzealous or overdoing is one of the things that happens when energy comes in again. You know, like we try to stay balanced. We're working on equanimity right now in one of our classes that we're teaching, and maintaining the ability to stay in the center and just, you know, not get too extreme one way or another, not to get too depressed or not to get too excited. And I think, you know, when things are good and we're really into really things that we like are good, we can overdo sometimes, and then we can have a hangover from that. So I definitely think that's important. So once you've decided where it is in your chart, what's the best way to work, do you think, Jen, with the new moon eclipse? What's the best way that each person here could work with this energy?
So first of all, eclipses are a time for surrender, knowing that humans are not in control right now. Higher forces are at work. And just 2 hours ago, my power went out and I was texting Melissa saying, I don't have any power. So we're reminded that, you know, we are not the end all be all. And the thing about Sagittarius energy, it's ruled by Jupiter, it's Zeus energy. We can feel invincible and we get reminded and we get humbled. So, and this has been a very humbling year. And eclipses are more reminders about, remember that we're just this really small part of the universe. So there's that. And then it's a great time for prayer and intention setting. So as you know, new moons are a time to set an intention for the month to come, and definitely do that. But you also, I'd encourage you, want to set an intention for the next 6 months. Where do you want to see yourself in June 2021? How do you want to feel as you're approaching summer solstice? And of course, ground. Practice yoga, visualization, whatever tools that you have to earth yourself now is a really important time to do that.
And, you know, I think in terms of grounding, a lot of people have been coming to me and telling me it's a lot harder to ground these days. And a couple of years back through the channeling, one of the things that came through is that the process of this change, this movement into the age of Aquarius, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, this movement into this new energy, the new age, whatever you want to call it, means that things are falling away, falling apart, a lot of the structures. And that includes the earth. The earth itself has been changing gradually. She's not been resisting it. She's just been moving along. And I remember Spirit told me a number of years ago that the blueprint of the earth is what we want to ground to, of the new healed whole Mother Earth. And so if we get so caught up in looking at all the things that are wrong and the poisons in the earth and the chemicals and the things that are falling apart, the earth changes, the fires, the earthquakes, the constant shifting in weather, which we're going to see more of, I hear, and you'll probably be able to say that based on what you see astrologically as well. But I think that the grounding is done on the new healed whole Mother Earth. So we call her the new healed whole Mother Earth. And that is connecting to the core blueprint of the crystalline earth. And the thing is, you have a matching blueprint inside yourself. The perfect you exists. And we're in the process of materializing, bringing into the material form, the material world, these higher energies that Jen mentioned, these higher energies that we are a part of. And once we are being truly ourselves, so here's Sagittarius in the truth, that little part that we are is part of a whole, and it works in perfect harmony, like every bee in the beehive. It's only when we get ideas that we shouldn't be us, we should be somebody else, or we're not good enough as who we are, and we start trying to control things or make ourselves into something else, that the whole thing kind of goes awry. So I believe we're in this reset that's kind of putting us back into the path of evolving into the next level of our evolution. And so I think it's good to remember that if you let go and sort of be in your truth and become yourself, you can move with the flow of this energy. It's when you resist it and you don't surrender, as Jen is saying, that it gets really hard and then the things start breaking up. I guess what would be the best thing to do now is maybe start talking about some of these bigger energies that are dovetailing and meshing together with this new moon, and that this new moon is triggering and a part of. You want to talk about that?
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. So we have a very special alignment coming 1 week from today on solstice. So Jupiter and Saturn are going to come together and meet at 0 degrees Aquarius. So Jupiter and Saturn meet together every 20 years. So first of all, think about what milestone occurred for you in the year 2000. So just take a moment. Year 2000, something big, something pivotal that happened for you. So for example, in the year 2000, I married my daughter's father. And that was the year I started my career at that time. I was a high school French teacher. So every 20 years seeds a new cycle. And we're beginning that new cycle literally 1 week from today. Now, if you look back in history, the last time Jupiter and Saturn met in Aquarius was 800 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So what's significant about that?
Well, what we're seeing is that Jupiter and Saturn have been cycling together in earth signs. And now they're going to be cycling together in air signs. So every 200 years, they shift element. So we're moving into air, which is really exciting.
Yeah, an air element obviously is very different than earth element. You want to tell us a little bit about what it's akin to?
Definitely. Communication, connection, idea exchange, adaptability. And I really like how my teacher, Maurice Fernandez, how he encapsulated it. He calls it pollination.
And that I can definitely see how little seeds of thoughts and communication can connect together and bring new ideas and openings. The way we work when we work with the elements is we bring the elements into patterns. So water being emotions and air being mind. So I think this is a time of understanding how to use our minds in a different way and be a little bit more maybe flexible with them than we have been, because we can get very rigid in the minds. So that's really cool. So I guess you told us what the air element signifies. Let's talk about the two planets that are coming together. Jupiter, it's a really cool planet. It's, the bigness planet to me. And then Saturn can be the contracting one. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got these two major powerhouses. These are literally our biggest planets. And I'm going to take a minute to give you some bullet points about what each one is about for those of you who like to geek out on this kind of stuff. So Jupiter pushes boundaries. It's about expansion, demands growth. Jupiter encourages us to do something meaningful, to be authentic, and to go beyond what meets the eye. So that's the really spiritual part that Jupiter brings in. And then Saturn, very different energy, much more realistic and practical, asks us to mature, to master something, to step up. And Saturn will test us, and Saturn will sort out our karma. So two very different energies coming together. And when they come together, there is a change of leadership, there's a changing of the guard, and there's often a rite of passage.
So I think, one of the things that's really interesting to me that I just kind of want to add in there is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an astrologer, but bits and pieces float in. So Jupiter rules Sagittarius. It's the planet that actually rules this sign that we're talking about, Sagittarius, and Capricorn rules, Saturn rules Capricorn. Is that correct? Right?
Yes. Yeah,
So
very good.
how interesting that they're kind of coming together. And I'm just thinking in terms of, if you start to think, if you have Jupiter in your chart, all of us have it somewhere in our chart. I don't have any planets or anything in Sagittarius, but it is in my 9th house. So it appears there, right? And if you think of your own charts and you think, do I have something in Capricorn or Jupiter, you can start playing with that a little bit, and some of the things that Jen is saying, like where you have Capricorn, you might be seeing some really big shifts in where you were, constrained to teach or to learn or to be an authoritarian or something. And now all of a sudden, maybe you're not the teacher anymore, you're getting to be a student, or you're going to travel, or things can be really life-changing with the shifting of these signs. That's cool, to think about. So I guess if you really want to know, and especially if you feel things going on in your life, you can certainly talk to an astrologer or talk to Jen about this idea of where might it be in my chart. I'm just thinking of one of my clients I was talking to today, happens to have a Capricorn rising, and there's a lot of changes in her life, and we were looking at past lives where she had been a powerhouse, like a mother superior or something very Capricornian, which perhaps a rising sign could indicate. I don't know, you'd have to talk to an astrologer about that. But I see that in her life, there's changes because the spirit keeps saying it's about you now. And what do you want to do? And where's your freedom? And some of the constraints that you had raising your kids or being a wife and a mother, that's all changing. So I just was a little segue, but it occurred to me that it can be really helpful, especially if you feel changes coming that you're uncomfortable with, or you don't know what the new thing is coming in your life. It could be really cool to look at some of these things. So this is going to hit us across the board, as a race, as a country. We're a Capricornian, Cancerian country anyway, right? I don't know, but I don't want to take us too far away from that. So now what do we need to know about Aquarius? Because these guys are moving into Aquarius out of Capricorn.
Right. So like Melissa said, super important. This is about thinking. So it's about coming up with new solutions for the future, new technology, new science. You can expect vaccines, air travel, space travel, and Aquarius rules astrology. I think you're going to see definitely more and more astrology coming into play.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much, when you look on the internet now, like there's so many different astrologers speaking, or a lot of people talking about the major changes, pay attention, so on and so forth. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. So in going into the next year, this new year, the question that everybody asks is, so we like to ask, what's going to happen? That's why people come to me so often. That's probably why people come to you. Like, what do you see happening next? But from an astrological perspective, to me, this is like looking at the weather. You know, you get an idea if it's going to snow or it's going to rain, and so you can wear boots or you can get a coat or whatever it is. So how do you see a big difference between 2020 and 21 with this energy?
So, you know, if you were to ask me, just like, you know, if you were to open up the door and 6 months from now, what would I predict? At least
Mhm.
my hope is, since Aquarius is about community, I'm guessing that we're going to come back into community and leave social distancing. So I'm guessing that the virus is going to lower. So I don't know if that means that things are going to go back to normal, but I see a shift in that direction. But what we can definitely do is we can look at cycles. So we're completing a Pluto Saturn cycle, Earth cycle. So, like we've been saying, Capricorn's on the way out, Aquarius is coming in. So, Capricorn has been about responsibility, accountability, especially in regards to power, right? That's the Pluto edge to it. And structures have been falling apart. I've been saying it's like a wrecking ball coming into our structures. So now we're going to enter a time period that is more progressive, more forward thinking, and a time that asks for standards to be elevated for everyone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From the perspective of the guidance that's been coming in the last few years, I tend to, around this time of the year, start to bring the energy and an invocation in for each year. So in 2019, the invocation, and we spent an entire year doing this prayer and invoking, was a message from Spirit that the higher energy was finally going to be really interfacing with the third dimension and changing it. You know, so it was constantly said by Saint Germain that this new energy would come in, it would be mixing with what's there like a recipe, and when you pulled your recipe out, it would be a totally different baked cake than it was before because it had new energy in it. And so, you know, 3 months into the year, we have COVID that's bringing in this viral energy. And what does virus do? Virus changes, you know, it changes things, you know, it mutates things, it brings a change in. And so it's certainly brought a change in our consciousness and a change in our conscious awareness. And the sort of the foundation to elevate it, as Jen is saying, to elevate what's there, to take these structures or to take the principles of, for example, our country, you know, all men and women are created equal, and we haven't been living up to that. And so we need to really go back and elevate those structures. This year, 2020, it was enlightened community with an emphasis on lighten and unity. And I'm beginning to get the invocation for 2021. And one of the first words that comes in is collaboration. You know, like you use the term modalities, that we have different modalities of doing the same thing. You know, obviously what we do is help people, you know, empower people to find their own awareness of themselves to move forward. And so everything, you know, can come together. All the cells work together in your body. You know, your toes that are very down there at the bottom of your body are just as important as your brain. And I think we have a tendency to decide one thing is more important or one thing's better than the other. So this is the time to elevate it all and recognize that everything and appreciate everything has a part in the whole. So I think that's really so exciting about this time. So I guess with the eclipses and this Jupiter-Saturn, you know, meeting up, are they interrelated somehow?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is the eclipse in Sagittarius and the entry into Aquarius are significant because they happen close to one another. So we've been talking about spirals. So I see them spiraling their energies together. And this is a new 20-year cycle that is blasting off like fireworks because it's catapulted by an eclipse. And so what I like to do is I like to look at these energies in terms of how they spiral together in terms of commonalities. So they're both starting new cycles, one that's 6 months, one that's 20 years, but they're starting at this major portal, major gate opening. What do they have in common? So if you look at Sagittarius and you look at Aquarius, you see that they're both about vision, authenticity, freedom, greater perspective from a higher and a wider standpoint. They're both about elevation, as we mentioned, as well as openness and acceptance of differences when they're at the high octaves, right? Okay, so we're talking high octave here. And then another theme that has been coming through as I sit with this is about being at choice as opposed to subjugated to force.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, does that come up for you at all, Melissa? This old way of being forced and power shifting somehow?
Well, my teacher is the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and one thing he often says when he speaks about communism and his real interest in it back in the day when he was a young man in Tibet, and he was fascinated going to China and thinking communist is a good way because everyone shares, it's this equality. And then when he goes on and he matures and he talks about it more, he realizes that it doesn't work because it's forced. Everyone has to come to it individually. They have to come to the choice of acceptance and balance. So we cannot force everybody to love freedom. We cannot force everybody to see that this is a time that people need to come together. We can't do that. And so the planet itself is elevating, which means the consciousness of the planet is shifting. So as we continue to incarnate, those souls who do not choose to go into ascension, you've probably heard that term a number of times, awakening, ascension happening in this time, that do not choose it will not be forced to do it because we are a free will choice planet. But since the planet is shifting, when whatever comes that will, sort us out, like the Harry Potter hat, whether it's a cataclysmic or it's fires or earthquakes or floods or whatever it's been in the distance, in the times in the past, those souls will incarnate somewhere else because the earth is going to be a higher vibratory force, kind of like Venus moved into a higher vibratory energy, and it's all about the energy of love. Well, the earth is moving into that. So that is what's causing some of the major changes, within human consciousness, the realization of this way doesn't work. We have to move into love and acceptance. And then we have this whole universe that we are individually that has to find that way to move into love and acceptance. So a lot of the work that I do with people is helping them come to the space of looking at the shadows and embracing them, loving and accepting the self. And then in turn, we can love and accept our reflections out in the world. And so, yeah, I agree with you. You cannot force it. And the best intentions, they don't work.
Yeah.
We find that out.
Definitely.
I have a little astrology question that I want to ask you that is really interesting to me. You're going to be maybe telling us about what's coming up in the next month. Like this December astrologically was phenomenal. And so if you want to just tell us about that, then I have a little question that I want to ask about what I've noticed. Go ahead.
Sure. All right. So first I want to give you some dates for those of you who like to track. I'm going to give you some dates. So if you have a calendar, because this week from now until solstice is incredible. There are 6 cosmic bodies shifting, plus an eclipse, plus solstice, plus an alignment that delivers us into a whole new energy. So talk about powerful portals. So today, Monday, December 14th, new moon, solar eclipse at 23 degrees Sagittarius. Tomorrow, Tuesday, December 15th, Venus enters Sagittarius and Chiron goes direct. Thursday, December 17th, Saturn enters Aquarius. 2 days later, Saturday, December 19th, Jupiter then enters Aquarius. So Jupiter follows Saturn into Aquarius 2 days later. Sunday, the 20th, Mercury enters Capricorn. And then we get to Monday, which is solstice. That's when the sun enters Capricorn. And that's the big day where Jupiter and Saturn come together at 0 degrees Aquarius. So I mentioned looking at where the eclipse falls in your chart, 23 degrees Sag, is a good thing to notice. Also look to where Jupiter and Saturn come together at 0 degrees Aquarius. Those are the two big ones where you're going to get a feel for what's going on in your chart, and you may need a little guidance with that. And then there's one more date that I want to put with these because it is really important, and we've been tracking it the past few months. Mars is going to have his final square with Pluto, square number 3. That's Wednesday, the 23rd, 2 days after solstice. So Pluto is an amazing planet to work with. We've been talking about power and force and shadow work. We do a lot of Pluto work with a lot of my clients. So, all right, hopefully those dates will help you if you like to track things.
Okay,
What's your question, Melissa? I'm curious.
Is that the full moon is on the 29th of December, so also a powerful day, and it's also an eclipse, but not a super powerful eclipse, right? It's just a partial eclipse. No, not an eclipse.
No, I believe we just had 2. I'll double check.
Yeah.
Eclipses come in either duos or triads, and I believe that this set was just a duo, but I'm going to double check just to make sure.
That this was a partial one, but whether it is or it isn't, what's interesting to me is that the first full moon of the year was in Cancer, and this is a Cancer full moon. And so usually your new moon and your full moon are opposites. So today would have been a Capricorn full moon. I mean, you know, or the full moon would have not been in Cancer. It would have been in Leo to match, you know, the or whatever the opposite of Sag is. Anyway, I can't think.
Gemini.
Right. Gemini. So it's interesting that we have a Cancer full moon for the second time around, very emotional moon. And, you know, when I do a channeling every single new year for the energy of the year. And one of my clients pointed out to me today that she was working on something. It was very Plutonian energy. Some old hurt came up, some patterns came up. She wanted to look at where the hurt came from. And she said she was like going through her phone, who had just upgraded, and she couldn't find any of her downloads. And all of a sudden the channeling came up from the full moon in January last year. And she was listening to the channeling and how it was so much about the emotion that was going on for her right now, exactly what was being said. So I just think it was interesting that we began the year with a Cancer full moon and we're ending the year with a Cancer full moon. So any thoughts about that, you know?
Yeah, Cancer is the sign of the mother. It's the sign of nurturing. So to me, it emphasizes this idea that the divine feminine is rising.
Yeah, and the earth is changing. As we were saying, the Mother Earth herself is saying, hey, I love you guys and you have free will, but I'm in the process of changing and you're either going to change with me or you're going to go to another planet. Kind of simplistic, but clear, right? Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So any ideas of how to work with these energies? I mean, I'll throw in some thoughts that I have too, but
yeah, I like to bring some practical applications to work with these energies. So I have 3 ideas for you. One is to really take time to consciously set your intentions today, tomorrow, maybe make an altar, maybe make a vision board. We were talking about Sagittarius and Aquarius being signs of vision. So an amazing time to vision forward, really juice it and use it. Number 2, notice body correlations. So I practice a modality called Yogastrology. So we're talking about Sagittarius. You might notice hips. Sagittarius corresponds to the hips. And some of you have been contacting me, telling me that your hips are bothering you, or you're having a hip replacement, or someone fell in your life and they need hip support. So notice what's coming up around the hips. The other body correlation I want you to pay attention to as we move into 2021 is Aquarius. The body correlation is the ankles. So watch for sensitivity in the ankles. And then practical application number 3, I'm a big believer in journaling. So I want to give you some journaling prompts to either write with, feel into, meditate, whatever you want to do with them. And I can post these as well after I read them. So I'll post them in the chat box right after I read them. So number 1, how and where can I allow myself to simply be more of who I am, my authentic, true self? Number 2, and again, I'll post them if I'm going too fast. Is there a person or situation I've used force with in the past where I now need to give space to be a choice?
It's a
And
really good one.
thank you. Number 3, what makes me feel free? What fuels my spirit? How can I step into more of that? So, Melissa, I want to turn this over to you. Do any of those themes speak to you, or Quan Yin, or any of the channeling you've done, while I post that in the chat box?
Certainly. I agree with Jen, taking this vast amount of energy and bringing it to a way that you can utilize it is really important. So practice is one of my favorite words, and practice from the noun perspective of what is my practice? Is it journaling? Is it yoga astrology like Jen? What is it? For me, it's meditation, mindfulness, conscious breathing. Those are the main aspects of my practice. And doing that practice daily, finding a way to go back inward, that simple breathing of pulling yourself back to yourself and bringing the concentrate of Dorian in, or Cassie in, or Anita in, just who you are, concentrated energy again, because we do get spread out in the world. We do get scattered sometimes, and we do sort of lose our sense of self, or what is our intention. So I also do, on the new moon, I do write out intentions. I have an altar, and I always write them out in a letter, and I put them underneath my Quan Yin statue. I always put the letter underneath her for the month, and then take it out. And sometimes on the full moon, I'll just burn it or complete the ritual and notice how much has been achieved during it. Because oftentimes we're just looking for one elusive thing that doesn't happen, and we don't see that everything else really is happening. So having a practice is key. And designing that practice for yourself with the things that support you. I think at this stage of the game, everybody knows what supports you and what doesn't. The trick is, I got one client who'll sometimes ask me, how come I don't do what I know is good for me? And I'll say, that's the question that we all have, So I sometimes looking at, the blocks that are in the way for me doing that very thing that I wanted, taking that intention and bringing it into action, taking that intention and bringing it into materialization. And so in a sense, that's the bigger picture of what's going on. These higher energies that you're speaking of, that these transits are showing us, that the energy is telling us about, the masters, the angels, the guides, the guardians, we're seeing that manifest in the third dimension. And in order for that to manifest in the third dimension, the stuff that is not of it has to come up so that it can dissolve, so it can go away. So practice, I think, is really key, and really important. So I think that's number one. And the practice that we can all do anytime, anywhere, any moment of the day is consciously breathe. The first thing that you do when the soul inhabits the body is that you breathe. Once you leave the womb, the doctor smacks you and you take a breath and you're breathing on your own. And the last thing that you do when you leave this body, which we will all do at some point, is breathe out. So it's a constant rhythm. And I think remembering that's what I love about the full moon and the new moon. It's what I love about the moon and the rhythms. And I love about the seasons. It's the earth is constantly showing us, the stars are constantly showing us, the heavenly bodies are constantly showing us that it's a cycle. And as human beings, I think we try to freeze frame the part of the cycle that we think is best, or that we like best, or that we want to control. And we find out that that's where our pain comes from when we're not staying in that rhythm. So it's the same if I go back to giving of the birth. That's when I kind of first learned about conscious breathing through Lamaze. And, it was the breath that helped. And it was like when you're in a contraction, you want to stop breathing. Or when you get scared, you stop breathing. Or, and if you stay in the rhythm and you remember the rhythm, and then you have these practices that help you stay in yourself and with your intention. Wait, my reaction is fear. I want to get angry, but my intention is to stay calm. Let me breathe through it. And then I can respond in a different way. So that would be kind of it for me, is making sure you have a practice, making sure you think about what does support you in being your best you.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. There's a couple of things that I've thought of when you come up. So Sagittarius is actually a fire element sign. So when coming into, you know, when it comes into an air sign, I think of air and fire. Sometimes, boy, we're here in California. I'm in Northern California, so you all know we've been experiencing intense wildfires, and now we're to the point where when the winds come up, everybody's like, breathing really carefully, because the fires can just magnify. So when you think of that magnifying Sagittarius energy and you think of it in an air sign, you could see how things might kind of really accelerate, you know, in a way that you maybe don't want it to if you're not centered and careful and intentional, right?
Yeah. That's where grounding really comes in, and pacing yourself. But we could also look at it from the perspective of mood shifting and mood lightening. This has been a very heavy, depressing year for a lot of people, especially people that are very earth and water based, because those are the two most dense elements in your physical makeup. So fire and air coming in, I think we're going to see that people are there's going to start to feel an uplift. And that would be very welcome. But yes, in terms of the environment, you are definitely correct.
And I suspect too, sometimes the uplift can go a little crazy, you know, like when people felt out of the restriction of COVID for a while, they just kind of went a little crazy, and now we have more COVID, right? You know. So
and when we say uplift, it's going to be a literal uplift. I mean, start to look at what happens with winds and hurricanes and all of that as well.
And I'm hearing and expecting a lot more earth shaking. So it is good to be flexible so that you can kind of move with the shifts as well. So that's a good thing. Wow, let's see. Anything else that you want to share today? The journal prompts, I think, were really great.
Thank you. I hope they're helpful. So I know we're wrapping up. I just want to share that I run a program called Sanctuary. We meet daily to practice Yogastrology, to meditate, and to ground. And I discuss the astrology of the day and the week. And so when I was tracking all of those calendar dates in my program, each day we talk about what that feels like, how you can utilize that, how you can harness that, and how that can help you navigate more peacefully. So anyone who's on this call who would like to taste Sanctuary, please know that you're welcome to come to a practice as my guest. Just reach out, let me know you want the Zoom link, and we would love to have you taste it. And then if it feels good, we could talk about you joining us. And then of course, also I do one-on-one chart readings. And I'm happy to offer a discount to those of you who are on this call if you book a consult in December, and that would be, of course, good anytime next year. So I'll go ahead and put my website in the chat box right now. And Melissa, tell us how everyone can connect with you more. And can you tell everyone about your chakra attunement call? Because that is so awesome.
Yeah, so daily, I also do daily 6 days a week. So Monday through Saturday, I call it the Chakra Attunement Call, and we're working with the energy centers in the body. We started it right when COVID started. It's free of charge, and anybody can join. Tell your friends. It's a 8:45 Pacific time, 11:45 Eastern, Monday through Saturday. So any day that you can jump on.